Thank you, Piotr. So these great presentations already, I think, brought us so many questions that the debate, I hope, will be very lively, and then we will have time for questions from the audience. I would like to go straight into a question that starts from the last map that we saw. So I think a question that many of us are wondering is, where is Poland in all this process of transformation? Should we be concerned, or does it stand to gain? I will start with a bit of a global perspective from Katrin, from Elance Desk. Maybe you can spend 1 minute explaining what your company enables, and then where do you see Poland in the global market of e-lancing?
So I'm working for Elance Desk, which is the global leader in online work. And we are basically matching freelancers and companies, just to make it very quick. The mission that we have is to build an online workplace for the world, and in doing so, reimagine work. And just to give a global picture, we do have currently 9.3 million registered freelancers on our platforms, and also 3.7 million businesses. This market is pretty huge. So just in the last year, around about $1.6 billion have been paid out by companies to freelancers, not only on our platforms, but in the online work market in general. And if we just, there's one company, online staffing analysts, who are doing a forecast of how this industry is going to develop, and they are forecasting that by 2020 this market is going to be at $23 billion. So it's really growing at a very rapid pace. When it comes to Poland, I looked at the statistics yesterday, and what I found very interesting was that we currently have 26,000 registered freelancers from Poland on our platform. And when we look at the rank on a global level, Poland actually ranks on number 10 on a global comparison based on freelancer earnings. And what I found very, very remarkable is that there was a very strong focus on ICT skills. So web and mobile development, which was actually at 79%. So freelancers that have web and mobile development skills are earning most money on the platforms, which doesn't mean that there are not other categories as well where they do work, because online work is really recognizable by all kinds of skills that can be done with a computer and an internet connection can be done through online work platforms. But especially the IT sector among Polish talent was specifically strong.
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to ask Tomasz, who has a perspective about the Polish companies. Where do you see the dynamism? We saw a bit the competitiveness and the comparative advantage of many of the e-lancers in Poland abroad. What about Polish companies? Where do you see the sector going, the strength and the weaknesses still?
I represent the American company which has its operation in Poland, because I work for Intel, but I'm also the chairman of the Polish Association of Employers of Digital Technologies. So I have also the perspective of the industry. So first of all, I disagree to that map showing that Central Eastern Europe is not present on the map of most developed ICT or most growing ICT areas in Europe. Because there are plenty of underlying trends which maybe are not easy to be captured from perspective of the research which has been done, but clearly show that this region is a very attractive place for IT companies to invest and also to grow. And I will give you just a couple of examples. You probably know that Poland is in Central Eastern Europe, the region which is the most rich in shared services centers. In Poland only there are right now over 300 shared services centers. All of these jobs are enabled by IT. Many of the companies which invested in their service centers are ICT companies. So to give you a few examples, it's Intel. We have shared service center in Gdańsk. It is IBM, it's HP, just to name the few. The companies also invest here in R&D. And you probably don't know, but the biggest Samsung R&D in Europe is in Poland. Intel's R&D, which employs more than 1,000 engineers, is also the second biggest in Europe if we also include Israel in Europe. If we excluded Israel, it could be the biggest R&D center of Intel in Poland. So from that perspective, we may talk about hundreds of thousands of jobs which has been already created by IT technology here in Poland. Another example where generally technology creates jobs in Poland, this is the recent investment of Amazon. Amazon started building 2 big centers in Poland. One of them is focused on logistics. And this is possible because of development of IT infrastructure, and this is possible due to the development of the technology. So just to give you another perspective, why is this happening? So I was the part of processes for evaluating the attractiveness of Poland as the potential place for investments. And clearly, Central Eastern Europe and Poland is attractive due to 2 reasons. First of all, the supply of the labor. People who are educated here, they offer very good skills. And they offer these skills at a very competitive cost. And here, well, there are two kinds of the markets to which Poland is compared. So the one group of the markets, these are the Western European markets. There are very little number of companies who are right now interested in investing in Munich. The cost of labor in Germany and in Bavaria are so high that well, that's very complex. Also, German labor law is so unfriendly that companies do not want to invest over there. Then the good alternative for Western Europe is Central Eastern Europe. And here companies look at a bunch of locations. Russia. However, if you would like to invest in advanced R&Ds, the intellectual property protection in Russia is questionable. So companies usually do not take that route. Then you take at the markets like or countries like Poland or Romania. And these markets, they recently have received a bunch of investments because, well, they are cheaper than Western Europe, and still they are better from perspective of the quality to other traditional centers for outsourcing. And the traditional centers for outsourcing, which I just referred to, this is India, for example, or Middle East, or Egypt. So these locations offer even better costs, but either they do not offer good enough quality, or they do not offer good enough stability. So from that perspective, from the perspective of the well, economical and political stability, also this region stands out and attracts a lot of investments in which result in creation of the new jobs. There is another phenomena which is also worth to be mentioned. This is the evolution of the jobs which we have, because it's not only about creating the new models of contracting the work, which is like the most extreme and the most visible case of the influence of ICT. But ICT also influenced the way how services are offered by the more traditional companies, and also the way how people work in traditional companies changed significantly. So with technology becoming more and more common and people better and better skilled at using computers, applications and more complex IT systems, we can see the phenomena of teleworking. where basically people working for big international companies, they have much better opportunities to participate in the global processes, to collaborate with the colleagues and stakeholders all around the world, and they have an opportunity to offer their talent on the international level. So I have a friend of mine. And there are a couple of reasons for doing this. So some of the reasons go into expectations of to create better work-life balance. Sometimes this is just the competition for work. People look for new opportunities to offer their skills. But sometimes this goes or this extends the productivity. And actually, in all of these reasons, technology helps a lot. And in Poland, we can see a lot of additional value being created because of the technology in more traditional companies. So I will just give you two examples which are good to look at. The one, this is doctor's appointments. Right now, in majority of private medical companies, you have an option to go for the e-appointment, where the service is offered online. Of course, well, you can't do the surgery online yet, but at least you may talk to the doctor, and you may know better what to do next. Another area, it's offering the legal services online. And this is also an emerging area, and more companies, especially small companies, before they go to lawyer and before they contract like a big legal firm to do the work, they start from getting the advice online. And so, like summarizing, I would like also to put here on the agenda the transformation of existing jobs and the way how the value is created and how the services are delivered.
Thank you very much. I think obviously it's very interesting the two examples that you just made, which are very simple, but one can think of the person who used to be a receptionist and used to do the appointments, and what is that person going to do? And I think some of the anguish that you sometimes hear when these debates happen, and I've seen, is really about what's happening to the labor force that doesn't have the skills to move from the receptionist job to the person who maybe manages 10 appointments online and make sure that it works. And it's probably a very different profile. I wanted to, for a moment, think about what are the spillovers from having such a high-educated, IT-capable population in Poland. And I think that's one dimension that then we will discuss more broadly about what's the impact on the quality of life, on the quality of jobs that the IT revolution is happening here as an example of a country that is going to transform fast. So I wanted, in this case, to ask Michał to just explain a bit what you see happening in the civil society sector thanks to IT.
Thank you. My perspective is, I think it's a little bit different. It's a small piece of the whole picture that we are talking about. But my personal opinion, it's a quite I would say positive and optimistic piece. I work with a Państwo Foundation. I serve as a president of advisory board, and the Państwo Foundation works on opening up public data and making it available. And as you can imagine, public data requires a lot of IT work and understanding. So IT in general, different aspects, is a very important part of the activity of this organization. If you want to check out what this organization does, go to mojepaństwo.pl. This is a good example and huge repository of public data. But apart from working with a Państwo, I'm also involved in a lot of initiatives working with peer-to-peer learning, with hackerspace movement. I'm a co-founder of Warsaw Hackerspace. And due to that, I'm dealing a lot with people who normally work in IT fields, and actually some of them are working in those service centers that were mentioned by Tomasz, as their everyday job is engineers, but kind of after hours, they get involved in different hackathons, in different meetups.
Can you explain what a hackathon is?
Sure. I saw some smiles on your faces when I mentioned hackerspace. Okay, so hacker. It's a good word. Hacker is somebody interested in how things work, trying to understand it, trying to improve it, trying to share the knowledge. When you read in a newspaper that hackers stolen credit card numbers, those weren't hackers. Those were criminals, I don't know, crackers, there are different words. But in general, so basically there is quite a lot of effort of trying to get back the word hacker, which in 80s was really positive word. It comes from MIT, it comes from the place where the technology was, well, anyway, I can go long about hacker movement and things like this. So, the basics. Then, hackerspace is a kind of, it's basically usually a physical space, a workshop where people interested in how technology works meet, work together, exchange knowledge. So it's like it's a club for IT professionals, people interested in IT. And hackathon is a kind of meeting where we set the goal, we work together on achieving this goal, and it comes from the word marathon. Sometimes they are called coding sprints. So basically that's getting in one room, working together on some issue, and and coming back to normal life.
So one room physically or virtually?
Mainly physically.
Okay.
Hackathons are fun when you do them physically in one room when you meet, but of course there are different ways of kind of telepresence during the hackathons. Sorry. But okay, hackathon is really fun when it's done in kind of physical way.
And how is this impacting? What type of spheres of life is this impacting?
So, I'm pretty sure this will be mentioned during our discussion, but from my perspective, okay, so let me explain the specifics of this perspective. During those hackathons, different sprints, during peer learning meetups, I meet people who work in IT, and I'm always really astonished with their involvement, with their willing to share knowledge. It's a specific group of people, but in my opinion, the IT revolution, the whole IT change, okay, IT is a complicated matter. You can learn this at the university, but in order to, once you leave the doors of the university, your knowledge is not really up to date anymore. You have to learn constantly, you have to improve your skills. And of course you can learn by reading books, by reading online resources, but peer-to-peer learning, exchanging knowledge, kind of getting credit between your peers for knowing more than they do, and sharing this knowledge, in my opinion, from the perspective of this little piece that I'm looking at very closely, of the whole IT jobs market, is most fun, most useful, most produces most brilliant minds. Another kind of advantage of these peer learning models is that even in IT, there is this kind of stereotype of an IT person being really not very communicative and spending time banging at the keyboard. All those peer learning initiatives basically improve the soft skills of people working in IT, and okay, you can be awesome coder. You can, basically think in Java or in Scala or in some other language. But if you cannot do proper teamwork, if you cannot communicate with people in the team, then the stuff that you are working on, the software that you are producing, has a limited, basically, scale. You can write small program, being a genius programmer, but in order to write a huge system which serves, freelancing platform or is a big website or is some ERP system, it's a work of many people. So basically, looking at this little piece of the world that I'm involved with, I'm seeing more and more very involved people, very brilliant engineers who are increasing their communication skills, who are establishing startups, who are putting value into companies that they work with. And coming back to some of the diagrams that we saw, I'm pretty sure I would follow Mr. Klekowski's remark that I disagree with what I see there on those diagrams. If data does not really support my disagreement, I think it will be minutes or seconds that this picture will change. This is my perspective from seeing kind of this bleeding edge of people working in IT with innovation and being enthusiastic about it.
Thank you. Yes?
So if I can add to this element of the quality, because there are two perspectives. There is the perspective of the micro, and there is the perspective more macro, so long term and short term. The perspective of the individual, actually every single employer benefits a lot from perspective of like work-life balance, opportunities for international collaboration, cost reduction, or even elements like disease avoidance from using technology. Because if people can work remotely, so for example, disease avoidance during the flu season, people, if they do not feel well, they may, and they are not sure they are sick or not, they may stay at home, they can do the work. They don't go there, they do not infect the other co-workers, and this has been evaluated at the European level. If I remember, there are several billions of euros of the cost connected to the flu every single year. And medical companies, actually, first of all, they promote vaccination, of course. The second measure to prevent spreading of flu, this is the teleworking. Again, enabled by ICT. Elements of international collaboration. Well, if Polish or if employees in Poland would like to collaborate with people sitting in US or Far East, due to the time difference, this opportunity would be very, very limited. I work in such way, and basically to the West Coast there is 9 hours difference. So if I only worked in the office from 9 to 5 or from 7 to 4, I could never speak to my colleagues in US. I can, because I can start, for example, 1 hour later, but when I'm at home, I can also do the work from home, calling to my colleagues in US for half an hour conversations or for 1 hour online meeting. I have a friend who works at Intel. He supports big international producers. He lives in eastern Poland, in Podlasie region, because he loves horse riding. And he can do all of the advising, the technical advising for very advanced companies, designing servers and server chips from Podlasie, from Radzeń Podlawski to Ireland, France, or Germany. So this is all of that is possible from the micro perspective. From more macro perspective, we need to be ready that right now or in the future, people will be changing jobs by far more frequently. According to the research which I have read, so far the average for person or in the previous decade, the average in Poland for person was 3 jobs per life. Now we are looking at the scenario in which people will be changing jobs 5 times more often, so up to 15 employers during the career. So from that perspective, this requires a lot of preparation, constant education, and the long life learning has absolutely critical importance to be sure that people can change their skill sets and also adjust their skills to the given period of the time, because as Michał said, in IT, the moment you finish your university education and after 1 month this knowledge is outdated, you really need to work constantly on getting up to speed. And this will refer to by far more jobs than we currently think. And there is also the element of the job elimination. I don't know if you want to touch this now or if you want to touch this later.
I wanted to get to that in a second.
Okay.
Just let me stop you for a second here. We are looking a lot at the IT specific jobs, but I think there is a whole set of jobs which are IT enabled non-IT jobs that your company, like your broker. So can you give us just an idea of, and then we get to job elimination, because it's really, I see it in between. It's clear that IT professionals are going to see this booming and the opportunities with them will grow. What about the people who have routine cognitive jobs? How do you see, how much of what you broker constitutes non-IT jobs, and what type of jobs do you see are being outsourced more and more? Can you give us some examples? And also, what is the type of tenure that people have with their employers? Are these new teleworks that are stable, or are these small employment relationships? It would be very interesting to hear that.
It really varies across the board. So what we are seeing at my company is that we see that there are startups, solopreneurs who need, let's say, a technical co-founder. And I have a colleague of mine who's on the side running their own startup, and she has found a technical co-founder based out of Russia who is now working full-time for the team. But then there are other companies who need help with, let's say, data entry, or they need a virtual assistant. And they can also find this talent online. As I said earlier, it's really about, it needs to be a skill set that can be conducted with a computer and with an internet connection. And this enables really for a very varied field of skill sets. So really from the data entry, rather low level skills, ranging to top programming skills.
And what type of, how is the employment relationship here? People upload their bank account and they get paid by task, they get paid by hour. How do people make themselves paid?
So our platform is basically the facilitator of the search and the match, the collaboration, and also the payments. So it's a 3-step model, meaning, let's say, a company that is based out of the US, they need a new a graphic design person who does the logo for them. So what they do is they post the job onto the platform, and then the freelancers who have the skills to do the job, they bid and apply for the job. And then the client goes in, or the company, and they review the online CV of the freelancer. They can also look at the recent work history, what other jobs they have completed. And all of this is very transparent because former employees can actually leave feedback and ratings on the online CV. They can also interview the freelancer, and then based on that, they make a selection what kind of freelancer they would like to work with. So that's the search and the matching part. Then comes the collaboration, which also happens on the platform. So the client and the freelancer, they share files, they send messages. All the work is tracked in the platform. And then once the job is done and the work is completed, then the client pays the freelancer through the workroom, as we call it. So it's all in one place to have a secure place for both the client and the freelancer. So we are basically the facilitator of this, but the client and the freelancer, they are the ones who have the contract.
So I imagine this creates right now it's small enough that doesn't worry policymakers too much, but at some point I can think of what type of protection people that do these jobs may want or may expect as they go through their life cycle. And I think this is supposed to be a very important debate. And in fact, in Poland, this debate is already very large, even outside the IT-enabled sector, because, for instance, there is a very big discussion about the incidence of civil law contracts and temporary contracts without all the type of protections that you have in permanent jobs. So this is a question for everybody in the panel. Where do you see this going? I mean, to what extent can people I have the feeling this is new enough that maybe all the questions have not been asked or answered yet, but where do you see this going in terms of how to frame these work relationships? Are people interested in, all of these are basically entrepreneurs. Are they supposed to contribute on their own to their own prevention healthcare system, to their own contributions, to their own pensions? Should the government intervene? What is your perspective?
If I should say a few words, I think what is really important, because this is such a big opportunity for everybody, for the companies, for the freelancers, and I think there are several actors who need to contribute in order to make this thrive and growing forward, and that's among others also to educating. So that we include this into that we let freelancers, but also companies know about these opportunities there are through online work. It's also about making it easier for freelancers to register, to be compliant with legislation, to report their taxes, but also to give them a stronger status when it comes to the welfare system.
Tomasz?
Well, that's a very big topic for the discussion, because first of all, if you take a look at the youth unemployment, this is huge in Europe right now. And in the southern Europe, there are countries where this exceeds 50%. In Central Eastern Europe, in many countries, this is at the level of over 30 or close to 30. And the question is how this is going to evolve. And I'm not the optimist here. I think that the number of people having just the temporary jobs will grow, and they will be partially unemployed, because this is also the part of the statistics. How do you measure this, and whom do you call unemployed, whom do you call just a temporary worker? But I think that like a very stable jobs which we enjoyed in the last century and the first decade of the 21st century will be going away. So the system needs to evolve, clearly, and the system needs to take under consideration that there will be people will be working with very many employers. The contracts will last shorter, and there will be the periods when people are not going to work. This is just my personal opinion, but I believe that this will go towards the system where there will be the basic support from the state, from perspective of the social security or pensions, and everything on top of the very, very basic level will be offered on top by the employers, providing some extra benefits in terms of like extra healthcare packages or extra pensions funds. So I believe that this evolution is inevitable.
Yeah. Michał, what do you see happening among all the freelancers that you know, and how do they think about the future, preparing for when they will not work or when they don't find work?
Yeah. In general, I tend to agree. This will probably, things need to change somehow. I personally, I'm in a kind of schizophrenia mode because for 18 years I've been working in technology field, never having a full-time contract. I was always working as a freelancer or running my own company. And to be sincere, I know ups and downs of this state. So I personally think that if, for the sake of life stability, some people need the security that full-time contract provides, and probably this will just be one of the incentives that employers provide to their employees. Remember that currently at the IT market in Poland, it's really difficult to get excellent specialists. Employers really fight for really good specialists. Or even, actually, I'm talking about excellent specialists, but I would say this is probably true for all the IT specialists with, basically not somebody who just started a month ago learning to program and he's coming for an interview. I had this kind of stories a few times. But people who have experience, who can do stuff, who are kind of self-manageable, it's a difficult market. Once the amount of people who can provide those services to employers grows, then I think that the amount of jobs which do not offer long-term stability but offer just task-based jobs or short-term contracts will grow. Where does it go? I don't know. I'm, coming back to your question, among those people that I work with, well, some, they do have jobs at those research centers where they earn decent money and they can afford, having a otherwise expensive hobby of being involved in a hackerspace where there's a lot of equipment, a lot of geek toys, and all those cost money. Some of them work as freelancers and do not care about security. Once they, get into trouble, they just get another project and they do it. It's a lot of different stories. I don't have any kind of prognosis based on what I see.
Thank you. Given the time, I wanted to give opportunity for people at the audience to actually ask some questions to our panelists or make any remarks.
My question is, from what I have heard, the story all of you have told is not that comforting to me. I mean, the people who work for IT, they need to go for a regular job to earn their decent earnings and some social security, and then after hours they go to hackerspace, and then they need to constantly improve their skills because everything is changing in this IT field, and still so they're working more than people used to work earlier. And so does it really improve the work-life balance? From what I have heard, I doubt it. So, because you need to learn to improve your skills, you need to work look for work on this freelance platform or for a contractor, then you are doing some job for civil contractors. It seems like a lot of work to do.
I will abstain from answering these questions. I lived like this my whole life. It's okay.
So I think that this is the trend. If you take a look at how kind of the happiness is measured, and there are the definitions for this, and OECD put in place like Better Life Index, and we can observe how expectations of people have been changing over recent decades. So like 50 years ago, it was the classical approach, well, having the house, family, and the car, and it was enough to be house, family, and the job, right? To be happy. Right now, there is by far more emphasis on soft elements like quality of life, like time to be spent with friends, flexibility of the work, and unless this is provided to employees do not take the offer to work. And we can see this very, very well in our R&D center in Gdańsk when we run interviews with new potential employees, either engineers or people working in marketing or finance or HR. They ask us questions like, for example, are we allowed to work from home? Are we allowed to come sometimes later? Are we allowed to get access to social networks during working hours? And well, we must answer yes to all of these questions if we want to have this talent. If we don't, they will go, they will set up their startup, they will engage in any kind of the freelancing work, and people have by far more options. So, of course, it is a different model. It's not as stable as it used to be, but it offers also a lot of advantages from perspective of quality of life. So, it requires different mindset, and this requires also setting different expectations. But I think that both models are good, and right now the evolution goes towards this more flexible model with more focus on work-life balance, but less focus on kind of the long-life employment and stability.
Thank you. I think Tomasz had a very good point here. And I can tell you a story of one of the colleagues that I'm working with. His name is Eli David, and he calls himself a nomadic freelancer. So what he does is he's originally from Israel and runs his own two startups, and he's never staying more than 3 months at one place. So when I met him for the first time, he was living in Bulgaria at that time, working. Basically, he has his work always with him. His office is his computer, so he can basically travel the world while working and working on his startup, and is meeting a lot of interesting people, entrepreneurs while he's traveling. He's always going to co-working spaces, which a lot of freelancers are using when they work individually. And I think this is a lifestyle that he has selected for himself. And I think, as Tomasz said earlier, I don't think this is a lifestyle. In general, the freelancing lifestyle is for everybody. Some people need the stability of a job, but then we also see a very big shift towards more flexible CVs. So people are not working for one employer for their whole life, but they're focusing more on income security versus on job security.
So my question will be mainly geared toward Mr. Tomasz Klekowski, but I'm sure other panelists may join in. So one of the most striking features of your presentation or of what you said was the mindset of an employer looking for where to settle an R&D center or some other shared service center. And so on one hand you have the skill set of local populace, on the other hand you have this costs perspective or legal framework perspective. And looking from the perspective of Poland, it's not my personal concern, but I'm sure I'm voicing a concern of other people. So imagine that either other countries more far away improve their legal or political stability, or that the cost advantage of Poland will wane, right? Which it's bound to happen. So what will happen next? What do you predict? And whether it will not leave a lot of, let's say, IT skilled populace geared towards some sectors, and then the big employers leave, and the local populace can either start a startup or reschedule their skill set, right? So what do you have to say?
Okay, so this is about
topic?
kind of the country strategy, but also this is connected to the individual decisions of every single citizen. And of course, this is not only the evolution where we do not have any say and we do not have any influence. So starting from building the skills, if we understand that the global forces are going that direction, and I think that more or less there is the agreement that the global forces will work like that. So what countries can do? Countries can do, for example, a lot of investment into kind of the STEM education. So the technical education, maths, physics, IT skills from the very early stages. And countries do this. For example, in UK, coding, so not only, so in Polish schools, when we say the IT lessons, this is about how to use computers. This is not needed. My 2-year-old daughter can already operate a computer and a tablet. What people really need is how to do the coding. And in UK, they started the coding lessons in the primary school. But well, the whole focus on promoting maths as a good subject. This is one of the solutions which, this is one of the of things which we can do to work towards the solution. And like growing also awareness where jobs are going to be created. This will allow people to construct their education and prepare for the future career. I will just give you a couple of numbers. In cloud and in the mobile space, in EU, by 2018, there will be almost 5 million people creating apps. There will be 2.5 million jobs created by the cloud. In area of Internet of Things, so smart grid, 500,000 jobs across Europe. In big data, here I have the information for UK. The number of jobs will grow 240% over the next 5 years. And right now, if you would like to search for data scientists, these are the people who work with on advanced analytic systems, working with big data. It's very hard to find them because, well, 5 years ago, this job hasn't existed yet. So right now, almost everybody has, well, pretty equal start to go and to educate towards this required skill set. Of course, those who have advantage in terms of statistics, maths, physics, logic, they will have like a better start. But because we know how much technical subjects are important, are going to be important, we may help well, the country, and we may also help ourselves on the individual level, increasing the focus on this area.
Any more questions?
Every time Matteo is moderating, there are no questions, I help him out. So, no, my question is that you mentioned that the ICT technologies, they allowed, let's say, mobile work, and that also you can work with your colleagues in the US and stuff like that. But I mean, teleworking has a serious issue of monitoring people's effort. And I mean, this is the age not only of ICT, this is also age of procrastination. So how you basically, how your companies or how you, at hackathons is kind of easier as far as I understand, because you get people in one room, you tell them you have just 2 days, and if you don't finish by the end of Sunday, I mean, you basically failed. But with the freelance and mobile work, we are on the move, we're taking kids out of the kindergarten, we go shopping, we check social media and so on. What do you do to monitor people, or rather do you put some effort in teaching people how to manage their time? Because it's, I mean, some people have it, some people don't.
So I can say a few words for this. On our platforms, we have been also working towards this issue that you have raised, and especially when there's let's say an American company starting to work together with a Polish freelancer that they have never met before and that they might never even meet in the time going forward. We do have a couple of tools in place that helps the client to monitor the progress of the work that the freelancer is doing on one of our online platforms. And one of this is to take screenshots when the freelancer is working, when they are on an hourly job, which helps the client to say, to in the first place, I think, create a trust relationship between those two parties. So the freelancer can then prove that, hey, I've worked during this time, and the screenshot is a proof for this. So this is just one of the tools that we have put in place in order to make it easier for the client to start building a trust relationship between those two.
So that's a very valid question, and basically, when we want to implement teleworking, there are actually 3 areas which needs to be touched. One is the legal framework supporting this, but the legal framework is getting in place with the EU directive from 2006, with following legal regulations in Poland from, if I remember, 2007, and then the recent changes in the labor code. The second area, this is how to support this from perspective of the technology, and technology doesn't create any barriers right now with the cloud, with the mobile tools, with the security solutions. That's possible. The third area, absolutely critical, this is the work organization. And here, I believe that the most important, there are 2 very important elements. First is to build the trust between employee and employer, that they understand that there is flexibility given, but also there is responsibility expected. So this is the one element. Of course, there must be also an element of control, but control not of the activities, but control of the results. So management by objectives is one of the tools which should be very, well, it's among others, but in my opinion, this is one of the best tools for managing the work of people who work in the very flexible setups. And I have been managing Central Eastern Europe as the region. I had employees in 9 countries, 70 of them. All of them were working, and we were setting the goals for them, and they were working towards the goals. We were not monitoring their activities. We were just regularly checking the progress, and we also put a lot of emphasis for communication, because people who work distantly versus the other employers, very easily they can be excluded from kind of the social relationships, they can be excluded from passing some valuable informations. So keeping them in the loop from a communication perspective is absolutely critical for making them productive. So, well, I don't want to give you a lecture about it, but we have published, and I contributed to that work, the workbook of teleworking. It's Elementarz telepracy. This is available at the web page of Leviathan and the association. And if you are interested, I can send you the link where we go through all of the elements. So the elements of the labor regulations, the elements of the technology, and also the elements of the work organization, which sometimes are the most difficult to tackle. And this requires really very focused efforts First of all, from the management, but also this requires some understanding and preparation from perspective of the employee.
I have two quick things to add. First one from the civil society perspective, especially when it comes to this monitoring of work and issues like this. People get tempted to think about monitoring of work in kind of loose employment relationship as a technical thing, and this leads to basically developing the tools of surveillance and building really weird and really dangerous relationship between employee and employer. So we are talking about technology, but again we are really talking about soft skills, about managing by objectives. We will not solve problems created by technology by creating more technology. Especially, and this is a kind of anecdote. Come on, imagine you're running a R&D research center, and so you want to set up monitoring infrastructure, which will monitor this bunch of really talented geeks who basically came up with this monitoring infrastructure, and they can, in 5 minutes, they can come up with some countermeasure for this monitoring infrastructure. So it's the style of management, it's the style of, it's the organization of the company. Do not get tempted about thinking of technological ways of solving those problems.
If I may add. So first of all, creativity and innovation is not linear. So it doesn't make sense to check if somebody productively thinks through the whole day. First of all, it's impossible. Second, the human brain doesn't work like that. So to apply like a monitoring system is impossible, and it doesn't make sense. There are some companies which try to do this. I even got the offers of the software which controls every keystroke of the employee. It doesn't make sense. I know the companies who did it. So what did the employees? Immediately they took out from their pockets their smartphones, their tablets, and they started doing the whole, all of the things they wanted. So check bank accounts, do online shopping, do social media on their private tools. So, and at the same time, the level of their motivation and affinity to the employer went down. So simply, this is not the solution. The solution is to create the trusted relationship between both parties and to help manage the relationship from perspective of the output, not from the perspective of the activity.
An issue of work-life balance was mentioned here several times, and I have a comment in the question. What is striking for me, I think this situation changes a lot. The issues that are important nowadays in relations between employer and employee. What for me becomes very crucial is the issue of trust, because what was mentioned here is the way the employer can check whether the employee works productively, etc. But on the other hand, I can see the problem of employees working too long hours, because we are, you've got your smartphone, you've got your laptop 24 hours a day, and the emails coming all the time. How to avoid the situation that, the employer expects you. Well, not all employers understand that so well as Intel, I suppose. Some are just using, the workers' time too much, because they expect you to work whenever you have access to your mobile, for example. What can the employee do, and how to avoid this situation? And what do you think? Where does it lead us?
I can give you an advice. I'm an employer myself. I have a team of 10 people, and at the beginning I told them, okay, right here at this team you're expected to work 8 hours. Sometimes there is a crisis. it would be good if you took one for the team and worked a little bit longer. And this is the conversation I have at the beginning with every person that's joining our team, and they work 8 hours. They work 8 hours. There is no pressure on being put on them, and this is again. Yeah, I could go for a long time about this issue, and I don't think there is other solution than individual, basically assertiveness and deciding that I will work 8 hours or I will work 11 or whatever.
Okay, so I do understand the problem. That I can see this. I can see this even for myself, because when I work with colleagues in Far East, when I work with colleagues in America, basically it means the emails are coming in 24 hours per day. So first of all, this needs to be managed by the employee, and the employer needs to create reasonable expectations. If employer does not create reasonable expectations, then people leave. When I'm an employer, I know that the cost of preparing employee to the work which we have at our company, this is the cost of dozens of thousands of dollars for the training, for assistance, for the time, travel. So, and we really made that calculation. So when I say dozens, thousands of dollars, these are, it was, if I remember, around of $20,000 for IT specialist or for the marketing specialist. So if I do not care, if I do not take care of such employee, I will have this cost repeated again. So. And this takes time. There is also the cost of lost opportunities. So I can't afford it. If I'm a reasonable employer, I can't afford it. So I need to take care of this. Then, from the perspective of the employee, technology gives you the flexibility, but also the setting the priorities is important from every perspective of every single individual. I can use the technology to, for instance, do some work remotely. For example, when I travel with my family and, for example, my wife wants to stay somewhere longer over Monday, I check what I have in the calendar. If these are just the teleconferences where I can call in and connect to the the collaborative workspace online, and it doesn't matter if I do this from the office, if majority of my colleagues are international, if I do this from my home, or if I do this from any other place where I can comfortably work. So I really use this. I sometimes work from home, I sometimes work from the office, I sometimes work from hotels, I work, wherever, but it's up to me to balance the work and my private time. There are the times when this is more difficult. Sometimes there are people who want to take advantage of this, and they want and the managers who want their employees to work too much. I've seen this several times, but I can see that with the goodwill from both sides, there is a good opportunity to find a balance.